What would drive a pharaoh chosen by the gods themselves to shatter the very boundaries of blood and morality? Akhenaten was no ordinary ruler. He was a visionary, a heretic, a man who dared to challenge thousands of years of sacred tradition. But his story takes a darker turn. Beyond his battle with Egypt's priests, beyond his obsession with a single sun god, lies a forbidden choice. A decision so shocking it would stain his dynasty forever. He married his own daughters. Was it divine devotion? Or the desperate act of a ruler clinging to power and legacy? Tonight, we walk into the halls of Amarna, where the truth of Akhenaten's forbidden union waits in silence. Akhenaten rose to the throne in a world that worshipped countless gods. From the falcon Horus to the jackal Anubis, every aspect of life belonged to the divine. Yet, Akhenaten defied them all. He declared there was only one god worth worshipping, Aten, the blazing sun disk. At first, the people obeyed. A pharaoh's word was law. But behind the golden altars and radiant processions, unease grew. To erase the names of ancient gods carved in stone was to erase Egypt itself. Priests whispered that Akhenaten had turned against the very spirits that guarded their kingdom. In the royal courts, his obsession consumed him. Temples of Aten rose higher than any shrine before them, while sacred statues of Amun were smashed to rubble. The empire watched in disbelief as Akhenaten reshaped Egypt into his vision of light. But light cast shadows. Behind the brilliance of his sun worship, a darker plan stirred. A plan that would touch not only the gods of Egypt, but his own bloodline. The question hung in the desert air. How far would Akhenaten go to preserve his divine dream? The answer lay hidden in the women closest to him, his daughters. Inside the sprawling palaces of Amarna, silence carried whispers louder than drums. Court officials noticed the pharaoh's strange distance from his queen, Nefertiti. Once seen as the radiant partner of his reign, she faded into mystery. Was she cast aside, or was she complicit in the secrets to come? Visitors to the palace described golden halls lined with imagery of the sun god Aten. But the grandeur could not disguise the rumors. Akhenaten had begun isolating himself from the world outside. He surrounded himself with family, keeping his daughters close at his side, as if they alone were worthy of Aten's light. The priests grew restless. Noble families grew suspicious. And yet, none dared to speak aloud the most dangerous question of all. Why was the pharaoh's affection for his daughters so unusual, so intense? The line between divine ritual and personal desire blurred in the eyes of those who watched. Even within the palace walls, fear spread. One misstep, one wrong word, could mean exile or worse. And then came the ceremonies. Public displays where Akhenaten's daughters were no longer presented as children of Egypt, but as radiant extensions of Aten himself. It was here, in the blazing heat of ritual, that the seeds of his forbidden union began to take root. What role would these princesses play in his vision of eternity? The answer would soon silence Egypt's whispers with shock. They were called the Daughters of the Sun, young princesses who walked beside their father not as children, but as living symbols of divine purity. Their names Meritaten, Meketaten, and Ankhesenpaten echoed through palace walls as the chosen ones of Aten's sacred family. The people of Egypt watched with awe. Every festival, every temple relief, every ceremony showed Akhenaten's daughters in poses once reserved for queens. Draped in royal garments, crowned with the glow of Aten's rays, they stood where no princess had ever stood before. At first, many thought it was only symbolism, a way to honor his god by elevating his bloodline. But as the years passed, the gestures became more unsettling. The touches lingered. The rituals blurred the roles of daughter and consort. The whispers turned into certainty. Akhenaten had bound his own daughters into marriages, sanctified by the god Aten. To the pharaoh, this union was divine. In his eyes, it was not corruption. It was the merging of holy blood. A circle unbroken, a family that embodied the eternal sun. But to the people, to the priests and scribes who carved history in stone, it was heresy. It was the destruction of morality itself. Even within the palace, tragedy struck. Akhenaten, one of the beloved daughters, died young. Some claimed she died in childbirth, a chilling clue to what these unions may have truly meant. Still, Akhenaten pressed on. The empire trembled, the people recoiled, but he refused to bend. For him, the sun was his god, and his daughters were his brides. But how long could a kingdom stand under the weight of such defiance? The marriages shocked even those bound to silence. In a land where pharaohs had long married sisters to preserve royal bloodlines, this was something else entirely. Daughters' children were never meant to be bound in such sacred vows. Akhenaten stood before the people, not as a husband in secrecy, but as a ruler unashamed. His justification was simple. If he was the living son of Aten, then who else but his daughters born of his divine essence were worthy to share his throne? But the priests saw blasphemy. To them, Akhenaten had crossed not just human law, but divine law. They plotted quietly, waiting for the Sun King to fall. In hushed corridors, even generals wondered if this pharaoh was fit to lead Egypt against enemies gathering beyond the borders. And yet Akhenaten's arrogance grew. He believed the sun's eternal rays would protect his family, shield his empire, and silence his critics. But each ceremony, each union, chipped away at the fragile loyalty of his people. When death came to Amarna, it came suddenly. The royal tombs tell fragments of a story erased by later kings. Daughters buried too young. A dynasty collapsing into dust. Still, the most chilling truth remained. Akhenaten believed he had secured eternity. But eternity had other plans, and what came after his reign would ensure his name was buried in shame. After Akhenaten's death, Egypt wasted no time rewriting history. His capital at Amarna was abandoned, his statues smashed, his name chiseled out of stone. The boy king who followed Tutankhamun, once named after Aten, restored the old gods and distanced himself from his father's shadow to the priests. Akhenaten's reign was a dangerous scar. His forbidden unions, his obsession with Aten, his defiance of tradition, all had to be erased. The empire wanted silence, not memory. And yet, history cannot be erased so easily. In fragments of broken reliefs, in tombs scattered across the desert, we still see the images of Akhenaten standing hand in hand with his daughters, smiling, worshiping, binding their fates under the sun's eternal gaze. For centuries, Egyptologists debated the truth. Were these unions symbolic, spiritual, or fully lived in flesh and blood? The evidence remains fractured. But the very fact that the question survives speaks volumes. Akhenaten's story still unsettles us today. He sought eternity in light. Instead, he found eternity in shadows. And though his name was almost lost, the whispers of his forbidden choice echo louder with each discovery. The man who married his daughters remains one of history's most haunting mysteries. History often hides its darkest truths, but they always find a way back into the light. Akhenaten believed his choices were divine, yet the world judged them as madness. So I'll ask you, if he lived today, would we see him as a visionary breaking boundaries or a ruler consumed by his own corruption? Share your thoughts below. And if you want more untold stories the world tried to bury, join us by subscribing, liking, and commenting. Together, let's keep uncovering the shadows of history.